Listener discretion is advised. 17 Days of Chaos. By Chad Fulks. Chapter 3. Things Get Worse.
A line comes to me, the eyes only see what the mind is prepared to comprehend. I believe that. We slept just 3 hours and packed the van. Brandon had bought camouflaged boots, pants, shirts, jackets, hats, and even walkie-talkies. Everything fit except the shirt and boots, which were too small. We set off for Huntington, West Virginia. I grew up there and I knew how to get some money. We holed up in a motel, Tina drove for food and Brandon and I pulled on the camo clothing. And then we hit the parking lot in the mall. It's a holiday, we told each other. They'll all be inside shopping. And so they were. In particular, they'd be in Sears. We parked to the side so we could both see the van. And then Brandon took the back of the lot and I took the front. I walked down the rows of cars, looking and judging. I marked those I'd break into on the way back. The best way to see if it had a break-in alarm? Just bang on the door. Someone shouted from a car. I hid. Then he came up the next aisle. I heard my name. I looked up to see Brandon in a Chevrolet Cavalier with a brunette at his side. The police, he shouted, caught me breaking into a car. He pointed at the girl, she said she'd help me. I climbed in to join them. But then it came to me. Stop, I ordered. You're crazy, he shouted. We gotta go. They're after us. But the van, I said. We can't leave it behind. Brandon turned to the girl. You want to help, right? She nodded in agreement. Scared, I know now. I got out anyway. I made my way slowly back to the van. I waved to Brandon that there were no cops and he took off, weaving all over the road. It took me a few miles at 110 miles per hour to catch up on the interstate. He pulled over at an exit. I stopped beside him. I got to know the girl was Samantha Burns. She's 19, a student at Marshall University, and she worked at J.C. Penney in Huntington Mall. She had a phone in her hands and Brandon a gun on his lap. I pulled out and he followed. We started up Route 10 on Green Valley Road. My plan was to pull into Green Valley Cemetery, which will be quiet enough to talk. And we do need to talk. Brandon tells me he made Samantha let him into her car at gunpoint because the cops were chasing him. My mind began to spin. I didn't know what to do or where to go. We smoked meth and Samantha said she had weed. Brandon had Samantha smoking from his pipe and I saw her eyes and the fear. I should have done something, but I didn't. You have to understand what crystal meth does to you and why I didn't just knock Brandon out for getting me into all this. You don't have feelings or emotions. You're just there, looking for your next hit. She got credit cards, Brandon drawled, and she gave me the PIN numbers. Let's go. We drove back the way we'd come. I parked the van and drove her car instead, so I could take her card to an ATM. But she'd given Brandon a false number. He was angry. Don't you go bullshitting me, he shouted at her, waving his gun. We did get money at an ATM, one next to our motel. I parked a block away, walked back, and told Tina what had happened. Andrea was sleeping. Look, you gotta help us, I begged her. Brandon's going to wreck if he carries on driving. She wasn't keen. She was less than keen. I can't, she said. I don't want her identifying me later. We argued until finally she put on a crazy hat that hid her face. We left Andrea out to the world and walked back to the car and drove to the van. I got into the van. Tina and Samantha followed. I'm from the area, remember, so we drove to a friend's house. Beth McGuffin would help. She let us stay. We smoked an 8-ball of meth. Beth made a pass at Samantha. She's always swung both ways. Samantha backed away. You go along with whatever she says. Brandon told her after taking her into the bathroom. Right now, though, I was the one taking orders. Beth gave me an address in Markham Terrace, on the edge of the Beverly Hills district. It's not as glamorous as its namesake. It's a street of cheap modern housing 2 levels high. I took Samantha's car and came back with a $100 slab of crack. By now, all three had their shirts off and Samantha and Tina had their titties out. They were playing strip poker. As I sat down, Tina took off her panties but kept her hat on. Beth was next. I watched, fascinated. It was then that Beth took Samantha's hand and moved her into the bedroom and began making out. Samantha, it seemed, wasn't playing along, because we could hear Beth ask what was wrong. I've never been with a woman, Samantha protested. I walked in there with Brandon to watch. Brandon joins them on the bed and so does Tina, who starts pulling my pants off so she could perform oral sex on me. When we were done, I walked out and told them I'd be back. I didn't care about the sex. All I thought about, cruel as it seems, was getting high. It's what the drugs do to you, you just try to get higher and higher. Back at Beth's, they freaked out because I had been gone so long. I don't know if they were concerned for me. I think it was because I had all the dope. We have to go now, I ordered them, and we drove the van and the car to Rotary Road Park. And stopped. The park is a large grassy area edged by Route 60 to the east and then the Guyandot River. By now, Tina was weeping and apologizing and saying she didn't know why she'd done what she did. Samantha was crying too, but silently. Neither could drive anymore, and I told Brandon he'd have to, that he was to follow as I drove the car. Not yet, he says. I want to get it on first. I drove on slowly, waiting for them to finish and catch up. I was beside Route 2 in a boat. Dock when Brandon came up alongside me. He pointed at a path beside a dumpster. I pulled into the parking lot of a bar facing the woods. He walked Samantha into the trees. A while later, he came out saying that he had tied her to a metal pole. Then he said it had been a tree. We got rid of the car a short drive later and Tina got into the van. Up on a ridge, Brandon pulled out Samantha's stuff, candy box she sold to raise money on Veterans Day, clothes and CDs. He poured gas over the car and then again in the trunk over Samantha's belongings. It would be funny if it weren't so tragic. He was bent over Samantha's gas-soaked clothes. When he set fire to them, the gas went up with a humph and Brandon pulled back with his head smoking. It was still smoking as he got back in the van and we drove off with his hair smoldering. I tripped out over that. How can one man be so stupid? We stopped again. We had to talk. What did you do with Sam? I demanded. He was quite open about it. I took her clothes off and raped her and taped her to a pole. But I couldn't get her hands over the top, so I pushed her hands round a tree. But listen, I didn't hurt her. I wanted to believe him, but I couldn't. I knew Brandon and I remembered how he'd changed the moment he'd gotten that gun from Tulsa's house back in Michigan City. How he'd waved a knife at James Hawkins that first day. He was capable of any stupidity. We left Huntington on the interstate, but no sooner had we driven into Virginia than he started arguing with Tina. The words I heard were, "Bitch, you want to go swimming?" There was coldness in his voice. "Shut the fuck up," I told them. "It's hard enough as it is to drive while you're high and looking out for police." But there was more to it. I kept thinking of such a good person as Samantha being tied naked to a tree and in winter. I should have done something and I hate myself for not doing it. I had been a coward. I was still a coward. The van began to play up as we climbed into the West Virginia mountains. It wasn't comfortable with its weight, especially with Andrea's 560 pounds. We'd had to take out the van's middle row of seats just to get her in. We pulled over into a rest area to find a flatter road into Virginia. And then 2 West Virginia State Police pulled in beside us.